Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're putting together a deep dive educative tutorial on what's easily become one of the most critical, and honestly, most fascinating roles in the tech industry today, the forward deployed engineer. We're going to focus on the key aspects and big questions surrounding this position because it's practically become the tech world's most sought-after job seemingly overnight.
To really get why this role is blowing up, we have to look at the current state of enterprise AI. And honestly, it's a bit rough. According to MIT's 2025 State of AI in Business report, a staggering 95% of enterprise generative AI pilots showed absolutely no measurable business impact. 95%, that is a massive failure rate. It really highlights this huge disconnect between the raw potential of AI and getting it to actually work in the real world.
And that massive failure rate? Well, it perfectly explains our core question for today. Why on earth did hiring for forward-deployed engineers explode by over 1,000% heading into 2026? Look, the industry finally woke up and realized the bottleneck isn't the AI models themselves. The real bottleneck is getting those models to actually function inside incredibly complex, highly specific customer environments. So the labor market is frantically trying to hire its way out of this deployment crisis, and the forward-deployed engineer, they're the chosen solution.
To answer all your questions, we've structured this tutorial into 5 main parts. First, the AI deployment crisis. Second, we'll define the FDE role. Third, we'll compare it to traditional tech jobs. Fourth, we'll break down the core skills needed. And finally, we'll look at the 2026 job market. Let's kick things off with Part 1, the AI deployment crisis, and why it's happening right now.
There's this brilliant quote from Perspective AI that hits the nail on the head. The models work, the deployments stall. Think about it. The current bottleneck in the AI industry isn't about model capability. We all know these large language models are incredibly powerful. The actual problem is the human-shaped integration required to make these models work inside messy, fragmented, and highly regulated enterprise environments. It's what we call the deployment gap. You literally can't just hand an enterprise a powerful API and expect them to magically transform their operations overnight. They absolutely need help on the front lines.
Which brings us to Part 2, defining the FDE role. What exactly is it?
You might have actually heard the term Delta thrown around. It was pioneered by Palantir back in the day, but what does this role really mean in our 2026 AI era? It sounds kind of like a military term, right? And honestly, that comparison is totally intentional. These folks are literally the troops on the ground.
Here's the definitive answer. A forward-deployed engineer, or FDE, is a software engineer who embeds directly inside a customer's organization to write production code, adapt software to unique data environments, and most importantly, own the final business outcome. Now let's bust a common myth right away. An FDE is not a consultant who just gives some advice, hands over a slide deck, and walks away. No way. They are right there on the front lines, getting their hands dirty, merging actual production code into the client's repositories, and staying until the system is running and delivering real value.
As you can see here, the FDE role is a true hybrid position. You're actually spending the majority of your time, around 60%, facing the customer. That means researching their needs and managing stakeholders. And this is crucial, that is heavily supported by active coding. About 30% of your time is spent writing deployment-specific code. The remaining 10%? That's internal work, like feeding insights back to your core product team. So it's this incredibly unique blend of high-level problem-solving and deep technical execution.
Moving on to Part 3, FDE versus traditional tech roles. How is it actually different?
When you compare a traditional software engineer, or dev, to an FDE, it helps to think of it like this. A dev builds core platform scalability for everyone. Their whole motto is one capability, many customers. An FDE, on the other hand, optimizes outcomes for one specific organization. Their motto, one customer, many capabilities. The dev builds the tool, while the FDE uses that tool, along with literally anything else necessary, to solve a highly specific problem out in the field.
And what if we compare solutions architects to FDEs? Well, think of a building analogy. The solutions architect draws the high-level blueprint and focuses heavily on the pre-sale design. But the FDE, they're on-site pouring the concrete, writing the production code, and handling those fun 2 a.m. incidents post-sale. Essentially, the SA tells you if it can be built, but the FDE actually builds it and makes sure the whole shebang stays standing.
All right, let's look at Part 4, core skills and responsibilities. What does it actually take to do this job?
First up, the technical side.
Look, while coding is obviously table stakes here, you absolutely must have continuous production engineering skills. That means deep knowledge of data pipelines, because let's face it, data is always a messy puzzle in the real world. You need expertise in cloud platforms and containerization, and, being 2026, you absolutely must understand modern AI workflows, like LLM application development, RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation, and agent orchestration. Basically, you have to be able to build incredibly reliable systems.
But here's the twist. The fastest growing requirement for this role, which is now popping up in over 70% of job posts, is actually customer discovery. Why? Because building a technically perfect system that nobody adopts is still a massive failure. You need incredible customer empathy. You have to be able to run structured discovery sessions, translate super ambiguous business problems into technical wedges, and manage some very diverse stakeholders. You are essentially a high-level researcher wearing an engineering badge.
And finally, Part 5, the 2026 FDE job market. Who's hiring and for how much?
The short version? The market is absolutely booming right now, but the job titles are really fragmenting. So if you're looking, don't just search for FDE on job boards. You need to look for adjacent titles, things like Forward Deployed AI Engineer, Applied AI Engineer, or Deployment Solutions Engineer. And you'll see these across frontier labs like OpenAI and Anthropic, infrastructure giants like Google and Databricks, and a huge long tail of Y Combinator-backed startups. The demand is literally fanning out across the entire tech industry.
Now, when it comes to compensation, especially at the top of the market, the upside is heavily backloaded. At these frontier labs, illiquid equity can actually make up to 70% of your total package. This completely changes the risk profile of the role, right? You aren't just getting a standard paycheck. You are taking a significant, real stake in the success of the platform you're deploying.
Looking at the actual numbers, mid to senior roles are clustered between $300,000 and $550,000 in total compensation, and staff or principal roles at Frontier Labs, they're clearing over $1 million. So it is abundantly clear that compensation is being set by the business outcome the FDE owns, not just the lines of code they ship. The market is basically valuing the ability to drive real-world adoption above almost everything else right now. To wrap up this tutorial, let's look at some actionable takeaways depending on where you sit in the industry. First, if you're an engineer looking to pivot into this role, optimize for customer discovery and definitely expand your job search across all those title variants we just discussed. If you're a hiring manager, make sure you write your job descriptions around the business outcomes the FDE will actually own, not just the tech stack. And if you're an enterprise leader, consider leveraging vendor-neutral FDEs to mitigate single supplier lock-in and make sure you get the best hybrid solution for your very specific needs.
Ultimately, the tech labor market is furiously hiring its way out of a 95% failure problem, one embedded engineer at a time. These AI models are incredibly powerful for sure, but they aren't magic. They require brilliant, empathetic builders to actually wire them into reality. Which leaves us to wonder, in a world where AI models are rapidly becoming commodities, is the ability to actually deploy them the only true competitive advantage left? Definitely something to think about. We'll see you in the next explainer.